I'm going to stick my neck out and I'm going to say that 90% of runners are doing interval training wrong. And you're leaving precious minutes on the track as a consequence of that. And if you think you need to go out all out at every interval, or intervals aren't that important for your marathon and certainly ultramarathon training, a lot of people do because they think, well, I'm not going to run very fast during an ultramarathon, so why would I need to do intervals? Or intervals only matter for elite runners, or that intervals always mean short, lung-busting sprints. If you think any of that, then I'm about to revolutionize the way that you approach your interval training and enable you to grab some low-hanging fruits, shave minutes, even hours off your marathon and ultramarathon time with no real extra effort, okay? There is going to be some effort. My name is Nick. I am a 1:16 half marathoner. Done that just this weekend at 42 years of age. I am also going to be going for a 2:35 marathon at the London Marathon this year, and I've finished in the top 10, including some wins in several ultramarathons. In this video, I am going to show you and explain how the right interval training can improve your performance across all distances. I'm going to talk through common mistakes that I see runners making all the time that are costing them time and energy. And I'm going to show you how to structure your interval training sessions to maximize their effectiveness. I'm also going to share an example training plan and how you can fit your interval training in your week to get the most bang for your buck. That training plan at the end, I don't want you to copy, but I want you to adapt it to your specific situation. Okay? Remember, this is all about you. So without further ado, let's get started. What is interval training and why should you do it? Interval training involves alternating periods of higher intensity running with lower intensity recovery periods. It's essentially structured mini cycles of stress and recovery that help your body improve endurance, running efficiency and speed without necessarily increasing your mileage. In simple terms, intervals are short, mostly challenging effort, typically 1 to 8 minutes, some can be longer and we'll touch on that, followed by recovery intervals at a slower pace. In this video, I'm going to be talking about using the rate of perceived exertion scale, or RPE. Your intervals should range really most of the time. You're going to be talking about a 7 to 9 out of 10, meaning that they're hard, but mostly sustainable. This kind of training boosts things like your VO2 max, which is the amount of oxygen, the maximum oxygen that your body can use during exercise. It helps improve your lactate threshold, which is your ability to sustain faster speeds before becoming fatigued. And it enhances your running economy, which is how efficiently you use energy. So intervals, they make you stronger and faster for any distance, because we're talking about so brain muscular, neuromuscular adaptations. This is especially important during marathons and ultramarathons alike by enabling you to sustain higher speeds for longer with less fatigue. A new thing that we are talking about in running is something called durability or fatigue resistance. And this is exactly one of the things that, it's kind of the holy grail of marathon training and ultramarathon training, is to be able to run faster for longer. And some of these intervals are super important for that. All right. Before we dive into how to do the intervals, let's discuss some of those common mistakes that you should avoid. And this one I see a lot, okay? And that is going too hard too early. Starting your intervals at maximum effort leads to burnout pretty quickly. What we're looking for is a sustainable intensity throughout each interval session. So something that you might see people do. So too hard, too early. And what you might see is people's interval where we want it to look like this. And people's speed is going to vary slightly throughout the interval, but what you might see people's interval look like is that they go, oh, like that. They start the interval and then it goes down like that with their speed. What we're actually looking for is for you to speed up into the interval and then maintain that pace throughout and then drop back down into your recovery period. All right. Okay, the next common mistake that I see people make, and it drives me crazy, is skipping the warm-up. Jumping into intervals without warming up increases injury risk. Simple as that. You should always include 5 to 10 minutes. I usually do 10 minutes of easy jogging, some dynamic mobility work and skill work. So things like A skips, B skips, high knees, that kind of stuff. That's going to help prepare you for the session. That's for another video. But that is a key thing, is people just skip the warm-up. It's amazing how often I see that. The next thing I see is not enough recovery. So things like skipping the cool down because maybe they were short on time. Don't want to be doing that either because that's going to increase your injury risk too. Reducing the recovery periods between the intervals. Now, it depends on the intensity of the interval, but that can compromise the recovery going into the next interval. So don't rush through those recovery periods. They are there for a reason. You need to maintain the appropriate rest times to be able to sustain effort. Now, a lot of people do ask me things like, is it okay to walk between an interval? In some circumstances, yes, it is. It is okay to walk, because what we want is for you, when you're in the interval, is to get a maximum amount of quality in that interval itself, and you want to be rested for it. A lot of the time you don't want to be going into the interval still knackered from the one that you've done before. So use those recovery periods smartly. Now, another big one that I see a lot of, and this is unfortunately been, I think, born out of the culture that we're in now, where you see people on social media, the David Goggins crew, where everything's got to be hard, and it really doesn't. So doing too many interval sessions is a big mistake I see people make. It's quite amazing how much I see this, and even some of the apps out there like Runner are giving people like 4, 5 interval sessions a week, and we do not need that much. More isn't always better. Excessive high intensity sessions lead to fatigue and injury. You just need to aim for 1 or 2 interval sessions per week, and we'll come on to that in a bit. Finally, lack of specificity. That is one of the key elements of any training plan, is its specificity. If it's not going to be specific to the race that you're doing or the particular goal of the time that you are at within your training program, because your goal race might not be for quite a while yet. So, what is it you're trying to achieve right here, right now? It might be quite early on in your training block and you're simply just trying to get faster. So having your running intervals without aligning them with your specific race, your goals, that limits their effectiveness. So you need to tailor your intervals to match the demands of your target events. Okay, so we've identified some of those common mistakes: going too hard too early, skipping warm up, and I'm going to add cool down in there as well. Not enough recovery between those intervals, or recovering properly between those intervals. Too many sessions per week. It doesn't always have to be hard. And then finally, a lack of specificity. So I touched on them just now, but let's recap on some of those benefits of doing interval training. One that we'll see mentioned a lot. We can't get away from it. VO2 max, because it's on our watches. Our watches are constantly telling us, this is your VO2 max. Take all that with a pinch of salt, by the way. But VO2 max, that is the amount of oxygen that we are able to use, the maximum volume of oxygen that we are able to use as we exercise. So yeah, improving our VO2 max is a big one. Lactate threshold. LTHR is how I abbreviate it, lactate threshold heart rate. We're looking to improve our body's ability to utilize lactate as a fuel source. Lactate has for many years been given a bit of a bad rap because lactate is produced through the energy production cycle, and it is, by its very nature, it is acidic. But what has been misunderstood, I think is probably the best way to describe it, for so many years now, is the buildup of lactic acid. That isn't technically true, because lactate is actually good. We want lactate because we're going to use that as a fuel source. But by doing intervals, what we do is we teach our body to buffer that lactate, so it doesn't build up too much of that acidic profile, and that's that burning, that fatigue sensation that we get is when we're running too hard and we're not able to clear lactate as much as we are producing it. So intervals are great for helping us to buffer lactate and use it better. Another one, running economy, or a body's ability to use energy much more efficiently. The higher your running economy, the faster you're going to be able to run for longer. Now let's practically structure your interval workouts based on, as I described earlier, RPE, rating of perceived exertion, vis-a-vis how hard does it feel. And we're going to go by duration. You can work in distance for some of your intervals, but for the purposes of today, and because everybody watching is going to be at totally different levels, so I'm not going to talk about pace and I'm not going to talk about distance. We're going to talk about feeling, because that's actually a really good skill to develop, and duration. All right, cool. So first of all, short intervals. Short intervals are high intensity. This is where we're talking about efforts that are going to be lasting somewhere between 1 to 3 minutes in general, with our RPE of the higher end of the scale, 8, probably 9, and we're talking about equal rest periods. So these kind of intervals, great for developing VO2 max, and we're talking about a 1-to-1 ratio. All right. So, as I say, these are great for improving your VO2 max and your general running speed, developing leg turnover, neuromuscular coordination. So getting your brain and your body working together, because that's what a lot of this is getting your brain and your body working together, teaching your muscles to be able to move quicker. All right. So a really good example of this could be 2 minutes hard at an RPE of 9 with 2 minutes easy jog. All right. 2, 2, 2, 2. And you could be talking about anywhere between 5 or 6 intervals for a more beginner, and anywhere up to 10, 12, 15 repetitions for a much more advanced athlete. But you're talking 2 minutes hard, 2 minutes recovery. So a 1-to-1 ratio. Now you could be doing this on a 1-to-1 basis. Actually, one of my favorite sessions to use is called 60-60s. So it's 60 seconds hard, 60 seconds easy. One of my favorite sessions. I particularly like giving this session periodically, usually on a cutback, after a cutback week where somebody's legs are a little bit fresher. They've had a week of bringing their volume down, taking on some of the adaptations, because that's when we get better, during rest, not during training. So it's a really good session to just turn the speed switch back on, get that brain muscular coordination going again. Fantastic session to do. And I use that sometimes all the way through, right up until race day. Even for an ultra marathon, just turns that switch on, but I will vary the amount of intervals that I will give somebody. But yeah, you could do 2 to 2, 1 to 1, 3 to 3, anywhere within that range of 1 minute to 3 minute is a great workout to build VO2 max. Okay, next up, medium length intervals. This is where I will tend to be leaning towards developing threshold. So threshold efforts. These are efforts that are lasting usually somewhere between 3.5, 4 minutes and 8 minutes at an RPE of 7 to 8 with recovery at half the duration of the effort. So we're talking about a 2 to 1 ratio. Because the reason there's a 2 to 1 ratio, if you think about it, in our first set of intervals with the short intervals, we're going really hard. RPE of 9, we're talking like almost as hard as we could possibly run for that period of time. Therefore, we need a longer recovery. Now our intervals are getting longer, the intensity is actually coming down. And that's the balance to have, even with your entire training program. The principle of intensity goes up, volume comes down. Volume goes up, intensity comes down. And that's exactly what we're doing within the intervals here. So for our medium intervals, we don't need as much recovery because we're not running as hard. Even though we're running for longer, we're not running as hard. So we don't need as much recovery. So in this example, let's do 5 by 5 minutes. Another classic one that I love giving to, for me during my training. I'll do anywhere between 5 repetitions. If it's a more beginner runner, you might want to start off with 3, see how that feels, because 15 minutes total running quite hard is pretty taxing. And advanced runners, you can go all the way up to 8, 10, even 12 repetitions. So that's a total 1 hour running at threshold. Really good for a more advanced runner. So your intervals, so your graph on Strava, because that's what this is all about, right? Making graphs on Strava. You are going to look a bit more like that, where your interval, so let's say this one, 5 minutes with a 2.5 minute recovery period. So recovery jogging, somewhere back around the zone 2. So by the time you start this next interval, around about here, you should be pretty well recovered. 2.5 minutes of jogging, easy running, you should be pretty well recovered. All right. So medium intervals. We're talking probably, you're thinking around about somewhere in between your 10K and half marathon effort. All right. So that's a medium interval. Getting closer to race day here. This is kind of where we're thinking. Okay, next up, we have our longer efforts, our sustained efforts. And these could be lasting anywhere between 8, 20 minutes, maybe even longer. What we're talking about here is an RPE of 6 to 7 with recovery at about half the duration, maybe even less. Maybe even just a quarter of the duration. So you could be talking about a 4 to 1 ratio. Depends on the athlete, depends on me and sometimes how I'm feeling. But generally we'll go with something like, so let's say a real classic one that I like doing is 20 minutes, 5 minutes recovery, followed by another 20 minutes in the interval. So 20, 5, 20, and then you've got your warm up and cool down. Don't forget, we've always got a warm up and a cool down section. These sort of intervals, this is where we're getting towards race day here. So, the whole point of, particularly with our marathon training, we are talking about, that 20, 20. I actually did a session just yesterday. Actually, I did 3 lots of 3 miles, which was basically 20 minutes. I think it was 18 minutes per 3 miles with, just 5 minutes recovery in between each one. And that for me yesterday was all about practicing marathon pace. You know, I've done weeks ago, I did those shorter, harder intervals, you know, a few weeks worth of that. Then I stepped up into doing those medium length intervals where I'm practicing more kind of around my 10K half marathon pace, building that lactate threshold up. Now we're talking about practicing our race specificity. That is super important. So yeah, 2020, you know, you could, if you're a more beginner runner, you could just do one set of 20, followed by your warm up and cool down. More advanced runners, you're talking about 2020, depends on the race that you're doing and the ability that you are at. And the time that you have available, of course. I will tend to do longer intervals during longer runs because the intensity is much down. It's a really good opportunity to practice taking gels. In fact, while we're here, why don't I show you something? I'm huge on practicing fueling right now, and these sort of runs, you know, in the build up to race day where we're training our gut during intervals is a really good opportunity to practice that fueling. So just for me yesterday, doing that 3 lots of 20, I took my first gel here, 40 grams of carbohydrate in that gel. Then during the 5-minute jog, another gel, 40 grams. And then on my third interval, there's another 20 there, and a 5-minute rest period, took another gel. And that was 40 grams as well. So 120 grams, that's quite a lot. I'm not suggesting that you guys do that. And I have practiced this over time. But just to give you an idea of where I would take gels is usually between each of the intervals, because that's going to just give you that little bit of an extra kick and just put extra quality into your intervals, which is what we want from intervals. We want them to be great quality. All right. In fact, I actually define it as quality sessions rather than speed work. Yes, I do say speed work, and I think I've said it a few times here, but I do say to my, to myself really when I'm constructing my plan, I'm like, right, what are my quality sessions going to be? And when I say that, that's where I'm referring to my harder days. Next section, how to track progress, because you can't improve what you don't measure. You know, what gets measured gets managed. So here's how to track your interval progress quite clearly. All right. One of the things that you can do to track your progress is repeat some key workouts periodically to check if you're covering more distance or you are maintaining a lower RPE at the same effort. If you have a chest mounted heart rate monitor or one of the arm ones, you can monitor your heart rate. You know, are you running at the same speed for a lower heart rate? Are you running at the same heart rate but faster? That's another really good way of doing it. A lovely way that I like doing it, I've talked about this before on the channel. In the UK, we have something called Parkrun. In fact, that's in quite a lot of countries now, but we have something called Parkrun. It's a really good way, you know, doing those 5K efforts, getting down to Parkrun on a Saturday morning and just going for a blast. I do that all the time. I'll go down to Parkrun 1 month. I'll do a period of, perhaps I've done some of those shorter intervals. I'll go then the following month, see if I've gotten a little bit faster. And then I use that time to reprogram my training zones, but also to see if I am getting faster. So, you know, if I've gone and done, you know, in my case, if I've gone and done 18 minutes last month, I'd want to see a little bit of an improvement. If that was the goal right now, is to get a little bit faster through those intervals, and I'd be hoping to maybe do 17:45. But yeah, those 5K time trials, as I call them, is a great way to monitor your progress if getting faster is a goal of yours. All right. The other way you can do it, as I said before, is to monitor. Oh my God. Let me write that again. Monitor heart rate versus pace or effort. Another way of doing it is hills. So if you are doing hills, the same principles that I have already explained around the ratios, that still applies. So if you're doing really hard hills, 30 seconds up to 3 minutes, you want that 1-to-1 ratio. If they're slightly longer, then you want the ratio to go more to like a 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1 as they get longer and longer. But really good way of monitoring is pick the same hill that you did last time. So if you've gone out and done 3 minutes on a hill the first time doing the session, can you get further up the hill than you did the first time, last month when you did the session? Really good way of doing it. Very, very simple. Oh, last time I only made it to that tree. Now I've made it to the gate. Brilliant. That shows you that you've progressed. And of course, you've got to love doing hills. Now, another way that you can obviously monitor your progress is through your PBs. So it doesn't have to be a 5K time trial. You can quite simply use race results. So, that 10K that you did last time, go and do that 10K again, or half marathon, or whatever the race might be. But races are an obvious and good way to track through your PBs. All right. Now, we all pretty much all of us are wearing certain fitness devices. A really good way to monitor your fitness. Might need a little bit more knowledge around it, but a decreasing resting heart rate typically, not always, but typically signals that you have an enhanced cardiovascular efficiency. So that's potentially another good way of seeing if your fitness is progressing. Not always, because resting heart rate does also relate to general wellness. It can also signify potential overtraining or under recovery usually. So worth just noting that in mind, but it can be a good way to see if your fitness is improving, your resting heart rate going down. We're getting to the brunt of it, so let's put it together. This last section is a full interval training plan, is a practical, adaptable weekly training guide to integrating your interval workouts effectively into your routine. Because you need to balance them with other essential runs like your easy runs and recovery and stuff like that. Okay, so and in previous videos you can see how I've constructed a week, but we'll do this again really quickly. So first of all, for a more beginner runner, I would be thinking more around giving one interval session a week. Any more than that might just be a little bit too stressful. All right, so an example could be that we do 6 by 2 minutes at an RPE of 8 to 9, so pretty hard with those equal rest periods. Okay, so 2 2s, and we do let's say 5 to 6 reps at 8 to 9. That's a 9, I promise. RPE. Okay, so that would be one session that you could do, and the best time to do that is when you're at your freshest, and that tends to be a Tuesday is a really good day to do it. Take Monday off and have Tuesday as your interval day. All right, that would be followed up, so let's call that Tuesday. Wednesday, maybe we use Wednesday as a bit more of a recovery run day, so our recovery run. 40 to 60 minutes, whatever that works out for you. The RPE for a recovery run, we're talking 2 to 3. That's really easy for that, because what we want is we want this day not really to be another run as such. We are using this as, yes, a run gets you more volume in, but with it being a recovery run, because I said it before, we adapt and get better through rest and recovery, not through more training. So what this is helping us doing is it's keeping us active, but it's also helping us to adapt from that interval session. Really key is for us to adapt from those interval sessions. And it's a key principle of mine not to do 2 hard days back to back, because particularly even for some advanced runners, what I want is for after, this being a hard day, this day here being a hard day, we've had our hard reps, we want to follow that up with an easy day. So hard, easy, hard, always an easy, maybe even 2 easies between sessions. And I'm going to explain that here a bit more now. So we could be talking about Thursday, that could be another day off. Why not? You're a beginner. We're talking about beginner runners here. So that could be more of a day off. Friday, that's going to be more of an endurance run. So what we hear a lot about these days is zone 2. This is what we can do here. More of a zone 2, which is still easy. Not as easy as a recovery run, but it's still an easy run. This is where we develop a lot of our aerobic fitness. Saturday, this could be your park run. Go get down to park run, go and have a bit of fun on a 5K. And then Sunday, we're talking about our long run. Or instead of LR, let's call it LSR, long, slow run, or steady run, long, steady run. All right, so that's a really good structure for a bit more of a beginner runner. Maybe not couch to 5K beginner, but as you are starting to build into your distance, we can take Monday off, Tuesday, real classic day to do an interval session. Wednesday, we'll do a recovery run. Thursday, we'll take off. By having those 2 nice, easy days back to back, we are adapting. We're not just recovering from this interval session, but we're adapting. So by the time we get to Friday and we do this zone 2 run, we should feel pretty fresh. Saturday, we've got our park run, and if you go and give it some beans, you should still feel nice and fresh for it. And then on Sunday, you've got your long run, nice and easy. Stick your AirPods in and go for an easy run. Listen to a podcast. Okay, so there's our beginner plan. For an intermediate, I would be looking probably more towards 2 sessions a week. Okay, so intermediate runner. So let's keep Monday off. Monday, great day to have off. It's the start of the week. We're all working. We've got lots to do. Monday, I do find is a good day to have as a day off because it gives you the day off from the weekend, but it also just gives you that start to the week where you're not stressed about trying to get a run in and answer all those emails that have come in over the weekend. Okay, so Monday off. Tuesday, again, classic day to do intervals because you've had Monday off from running and exercise in general, really, is by Tuesday, you should be feeling pretty fresh and therefore you can get that quality into your interval session. All right. So for an intermediate runner, that 2 interval sessions per week, one of them would be a shorter interval session. It depends on where we're at in the training plan, but just for the purposes of this video, we will go with, this could be more like 8 to 10 reps of 2 minutes hard, 2 minutes easy. Obviously with your warm up and cool down either side of that, at an RPE of 8 to 9. So you're getting roughly around about 20 minutes of very hard VO2 max building, neuromuscular development, getting that brain muscle connection to get you running faster. 8 to 9 RPE. Wednesday, let's do our recovery run. Now Thursday, we could do another interval session. But what I've tended to find, mostly with myself, so a little bit anecdotal, but I do see it with other people as well, is you could do another session on Thursday, and that tends to be a fairly classic way of doing it. However, I do tend to find that by doing something more of a, that easy endurance zone 2 type run, and if you're marathon training, it might be, a little bit longer, maybe sort of 8 to 10 miles. What I do tend to find is if you get to Friday, you should be feeling pretty well rested now. And this is where you could put in something with some more medium intervals for your second session. So the intensity's down, longer intervals, but because you've had two, definitely an easy day with that, 40 to 60 minute recovery run, your easy zone 2 run should still be easy enough that by the time you get to Friday, you're feeling pretty fresh, and you can do, maybe do 3 by 8 minutes at an RPE of roughly around about 7, maybe 8, probably not 8, but yeah, more like 7. So, we're in that sort of realms of 10K to half marathon effort. Saturday and Sunday, I would be doing another easy run, maybe like a 10K easy on Saturday. If you were to do park run, then I would not do that Friday hard run. And then Sunday, your long, slow run. Now, let's say you're a more advanced runner. I'm talking about sub 3 marathoners, sub 130, 125 half marathoners, ultra runners that are perhaps finding themselves more towards the front of the pack. For you guys, the structure doesn't differ too much from intermediate. What probably is going to be, differing for an advanced runner versus a more intermediate runner is likely to be the amount of volume that we do. All right, so I would generally still say, let's get that Monday off. Let's use that as our recovery day, particularly after, the previous 6 days, Tuesday to Sunday, are going to be where we're going to be doing the work. Tuesday, let's do our session. Let's stick with the theme of 2-minute intervals. But for a more advanced runner, I would probably be talking about maybe 12 to 15 of 2-minute intervals. Perhaps on a track if you can. I mean, I would say that for anybody. But that's a really good place to be doing it. So 12 by 15, 2-minute reps at an RPE of 9 with your warm up and cool down. And you could even, for an advanced runner, you could even extend your warm up and certainly your cool down. Do a longer cool down, get that additional volume through your cool down. So you might want to be thinking about, instead of doing a 10-minute cool down, perhaps you do 20, even 30-minute as a cool down. Really easy jogging. You could even have a second run that day as an advanced runner. What I would probably be doing is just keeping that as like a 40-minute. So there's your run 1, run 2 as a 40-minute recovery. Spread quite well apart. Wednesday, let's keep that theme of the recovery run going. For a more advanced runner, instead of sort of 40 to 60 minute, you could even be doing 90 to 120 minute as a recovery run. Nice, easy jogging. Maybe get out on the trails, enjoy nature. Really good way of doing that. Thursday, for an advanced runner, I would say that there is a bit more scope to add in some additional intensity, because we're increasing the volume for a more advanced runner. So on that Thursday, you could do that as your tempo day. And a really good way of doing that is if you can run twice in a day. So instead of doing maybe 3 by 15 minutes for example, you could do, that could be a session that you do, but you could also do it as run 1, run 2, and you could do 2 by 15 minutes with a 5-minute recovery in between each one. 5-minute recovery. And then your second run of the day, later on in the evening, you could do, obviously with your warm up and your cool down either side, you could get that other 15 minutes in later on. But actually you could extend that because it's not all in one session. You've got a little bit more time to recover. So you could even do 2 by 10 minutes with 3-minute recovery, something like that. All right, so that could be your Thursday. Friday, zone 2. Saturday, maybe you go to parkrun. Maybe you go and do something that is more zone 2 running. And what you could do then on Sunday, zone 2, is during your Sunday long run, you could add in maybe 30 minutes or 2 lots of 30 minutes of more of that that race intensity. So practicing perhaps your actual marathon pace that you are looking to target, or the intensity that you're looking to run your ultra marathon. So, you know, maybe chuck in 2 lots of 30-minute intervals into that. A real classic one that I do actually is I throw in those 2 lots of 30 minutes towards the start of the run. So I'll do 10 minutes of warm up running. Then I'll just increase the intensity only to sort of 5 or 6, nothing crazy, for 30 minutes. Have a 5-minute, 10-minute reduction in intensity. Bring it back up for another 30 minutes, and then I'll do 2 hours of that zone 2 running, and it really helps to simulate that race fatigue that you're going to feel towards the end. Okay, so to summarize this section, I would say, you know, I've given you some ideas there, but I would always be looking to adapt interval volume and intensity to your current fitness level, and adjust recovery periods based on your body's feedback, so you can avoid overtraining or really under recovering. Just remember that the most effective interval training plan blends intensity with balanced recovery and endurance training, which will help prevent injury, and it'll optimize your progress. All right. So with that, if you found this helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments, what is your favorite interval workout? What do you love to do? And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. I'm really happy to help you as much as I can. The link to my Instagram is in the description somewhere. Hope that's been really helpful for you folks. Thank you.